Easy
Hi
E.
guys.
Eric, okay, we'll start that again. Just jump
You start.
talking over each other before we get going. No, we just
Normally,
throw straight into it. Normally you start, Rachel. So you know what, ladies
normally
first.
there's such a long pause. If someone doesn't start, we normally have this long awkward silence for a few seconds. So
Yeah,
I was a bit quick to jump in this week.
well, I realized like little things bother me. For the past week, I was like, I really started a podcast with Eric E last week when I've done like Easy E for so many podcasts before. It flows a little bit better. Still not too sure about Rachel E for the start of the intro, but I'm gonna let you go with it, Rachel. You start the intro. Well, this is the intro anyway, but you just work away. Eric's there rubbing his eyes. He's tired. He's had a long week skiing and topping the any given training day leaderboard and Strava by just like flowing downhill.
I have a gripe with Garmin.
All right, you shoot for the start.
All right.
I skied from 9 a.m, stopped for a burger at lunch, and skied all the way up until 5 o'clock. My Garmin told me I was doing fuck all.
Well, maybe you were like, how much are you on the lift and like, because you're not skiing. There's not effort for 8 hours.
Yeah, but when you're coming down the slope, there's so much effort and concentration required, especially when you're an average skier. When you're a good skier, it's grand. When you're very, very average like me, it's fucking horrific. My legs, by 3 o'clock, my legs wouldn't work. I tried to turn coming down the hill and I was like, okay, I'll just turn here. My right leg said, yeah, no problem. My left leg said no. And my skis crossed and I came tumbling down a hill. So technically, my legs were dead. It was like having a dead leg at the end of each day because I was working so hard just to stay upright.
Jeez.
So that's what annoyed me because my heart rate wasn't high. I was sweating. And my Garmin, after all that, I think I fell 28 times one day. Like the hardest part is trying to climb back up the mountain to try and pick up your skis after you come tumbling down. And Garmin, after I hit stop at 5 o'clock, said you need 1 hour recovery. I thought I nearly hopped it off the wall. What a load of shit. I was in bed by 8. I slept for 12 hours. I was in agony.
My God, I did a 7K run this week and Garmin told me I was unproductive and needed 20 hours recovery and my heart rate barely got over like 150. So I don't know what's going on. It has a prejudice to running, doesn't it, for recovery time?
Oh, stop. It's so annoying. And then, I was just so tired. And then when I'm looking at my productivity, your 7-day productivity kind of thing, I had done 12 hours training last week. And then it just says I'm doing nothing. It just dropped out of this really high green zone down to the floor. But
so it's more like leg day every day. It's not like you're going out for a run. It's just leg day from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m.
Yeah. And I have to say, you can't call a ski holiday a holiday. It's a ski camp is what it is. It's ski camp because I am wrecked. My body has been battered. But I have to say, by the 6th day, you do get quite good. But my legs just stopped working at 3 o'clock and I knew I had to ski home. And there was one point I knew I had to get down to one, get up a chairlift and ski down to another. And I actually got down to the bottom of the second last slope and I said, I think I'm just going to get the bus. I can't go up another mountain. I am actually in bits. My legs wouldn't work.
Jeez.
It was just like dead legs.
I saw the Instagram video, leaping Larry over here with your massive jumps over the snow. Absolutely phenomenal. We'll have to put that on the Any Given Training Day, just the Insta stories there tomorrow so people know exactly what we're talking about there on that one. But tremendous leaps.
However, it does lead to my point. Don't listen to your watch. Listen to your body, because I was working. My watch was telling me I was burning nearly 4,000 calories a day. But because it was registering, the heart rate between 110 and 140 for hours, which is good endurance. But in terms of the activity, it's like, no, you didn't do that much. So yeah, it's quite intense of a week. But yeah, just knowing your body. That's all I'll say is the only way you'll sleep at night if you're a Garmin owner. Just listen to your body.
Well, it's unusual anyway to be constantly between 110 and 140 throughout an entire day. Like usually you're sitting or standing or walking a little bit or work or something like that. You're never constantly in that weird zone where you're Not quite all out, but not quite not. So it probably is difficult for a watch to register that, or even yourself. Like,
yeah, but even in ski mode, I was expecting it would appreciate some of my high speed downhills. But it's I have to say it's amazing. Like I've come down hills on bikes and I've kind of covered the brakes going, ooh, this is a bit fast. But I've never been so out of control on two sticks in my life that I couldn't stop. I just, like, a ski school would be coming down and they do their little snake and it's a load of, like, a group of 12 3-year-olds on the top of this mountain, not a bother, just following this perfect snake behind the instructor. Down comes Eric, who can't stop. So I just, like, I can't maneuver around them because I'm not good enough. So I just have to go straight. So I just put the skis straight and whatever bouncing happens. But I can't stop at the end. I kind of have to allow myself a bit of a run off to slow down. So I think I hit nearly 70 kilometers an hour down one hill because I just had to go straight because I couldn't turn. So
my God,
it's brilliant. It is the most terrifying, exhilarating, fun, I will say humbling experience as well, because when you're watching people eloquently just gliding gracefully down a hill, and then you see me growling and mumbling and effing and blinding and shouting at people in French. It was brilliant. It was absolutely great. I would recommend a ski camp, not a ski holiday.
A ski camp. Brilliant.
I love it. Reinventing it.
So what's on this week, gang?
So this week we have a guest. She's been a former guest on the podcast as well, Martina from Fit Manal. So Martina was on before Christmas chatting to us. You know, I suppose one of the reasons that you guys invited me to be a part of this whole podcast experience was to get a different opinion on things, like get a female voice in. And that's something that I've tried to do and reach out to other women who are going to come and, you know, tell us a bit more about training specifically for women, because at the end of the day, I can't even say this word, physiologically, no, messing it up. Head is fried.
Yeah, you're right. Go on.
You know, physically women are very different to men. So how you train, recover, and everything is different. So Martina was on before Christmas talking to us just about understanding the menstrual cycle and training around it. Because believe it or not, your body is better adapted to strength training on a certain week of the menstrual cycle versus the other 3 weeks. And you guys are just looking at me going, we're so glad we did not have this conversation. Am I right?
One kind of cycle.
So that's, you know, again, so that's what Martina was.
1 week of the month is like the strength training week.
Yeah, 1 week of the month, your body is just way more capable of taking that strain, and you just get more out of your strength training on one particular week versus the other 3 weeks.
Does that mean you build to that one particular week? As in, like, not that every once a month you should have like a testing week, but in terms of like, okay, if you've got a 3-week program, week 3 of that program is going to be the coincide with that week. And is that something that a lot of people don't do that should do, or is that what you're going to get into the podcast?
But you're exactly right about that you can build up, and then that week, and again, it's the same week for every person, but not everyone coincides with their period. So it just depends on what week you are in the cycle. But yeah, that particular week for me would be the week where if I was following a program, I'd want to hit the hard weights that week. And then there's another week, I think 2 weeks on from that, your body temperature rises and things like that. So you just need to take it a bit easier. So if you're doing like a 4-week cycle and you have an easy week in there, you time your easy week for this one. And I just can't remember the names off the top of my head. But that's what we talked about before Christmas. So definitely any women out there, definitely go back and listen to that podcast. But what we actually covered this week, and again, I think everyone knows at this stage, they're pre-recorded before we do this intro. We actually talked about training around pregnancy specifically. And so that's what Martina specializes in, is pre and postnatal personal training. So during pregnancy and after pregnancy. And I suppose best way to think about this is like an injury. You can't, if you get injured, you can't expect to train at the same intensity or the same level that you were training beforehand. You need to listen to your body, but then listen to your body in a very sensible manner. So I'm not saying that pregnancy is an injury, but you can't expect to train like you were training if you are pregnant. And likewise, when you have your baby, you can't expect to get back into training very quickly, just like you wouldn't with an injury. So it is really interesting. You guys mightn't have to ever worry about that.
Yes and no. Well, in my field, I just got to train other people, you would, but you'd be around people, and even I suppose doing this podcast and stuff, when you're asked for advice and that, it is important to know, okay, you obviously have to change your goals when something like that comes. Obviously, your life goals changes when you're pregnant, but you can't be just like, hey, we're going for a 20K run unless they've built somewhere close to that. Maybe I'm not saying that in the start, but I don't know. That's why we have this podcast on now.
Exactly. And like Martina is just a bubble of knowledge, but we also talk about it's so important for, like, let's say, Sean, if you were training a woman who was pregnant and training around pregnancy is not your specialty, saying, okay, hang on, it's okay for you to go and get advice from someone else. Like, I'll still be here, but I would be happy with you seeking advice from someone who is knowledgeable in this field, who could maybe help you out or just give you a bit more understanding of what you should be doing.
Yeah, that's something that needs to be done a lot more in the industry all around, whereas people excel in certain areas, and it's okay to say, I don't know, in a question, rather than bluff an answer and push it out to someone. Like, so if I have someone that's going for, sub 20 or sub 18 5Ks, I'm like, I'm not the best guy to answer this. I know there's certain principles of it, but you're better off going to Rachael, who can get more in detail on that. Or Eric, if it was more cycling kind of questions get thrown my way, I'd be like, you know what? I don't know exactly what way to shift the gears going up mountains, but I know someone that's a bit more specific. And this is the exact same thing. If you're excelling in a certain area of it, instead of blagging your way through and just assuming things, you can get a lot quicker down the road with your results if you ask the expert, pretty much. And that's exactly what we're doing today with Martina.
Exactly. And like, I suppose the thing with pregnancy is the sooner you start looking for that advice and doing the correct strengthening training, especially for your pelvic floor, the easier it's going to be for you getting back to training the other side of your pregnancy. And this is just all things, again, one of the reasons we do the podcast is so that we can get people like Martina on who have all this knowledge and are just so happy to share it. So not going to say any more. We're just going to get straight into this, but it is so worth it. Listen, this and her previous episode before Christmas. We'll link that as well this week in stories.
With that said, let's hit the intro music. Let's go.
So Martina, welcome back to the Any Given Run Day podcast. We're delighted to welcome you back on. How have you been since we were last chatting to you?
It's been good, to be fair. I did the Art and Neil Challenge in Dublin there at the end of January. I thought I would never say this, but really enjoyed the 60k distance, and probably something I'd look to run a few more ultra races this year, but sure, we'll see how the training goes.
That does seem to be the thing, that once you get up to ultramarathon distance, you do get kind of hooked. It's like marathon's the first step. You do your first marathon, great. You're just eager to do more. And then it seems to be ultra marathons is like, okay, once you hit there, you are obsessed. You just have to do another one. It's not even a want, it's a must at that stage.
I definitely think it's easy, like getting to marathon and putting in the mileage. It's a big step up. And once you've gotten to that sort of mileage and the marathon, going to the 60K is very easy, and it feels very comfortable, because as well, it's not like a road marathon where it's constantly running. Like, you get to walk, and no one's going to stand behind you with a stick and say, you should be running the whole lot of this. So it's quite enjoyable, really.
And I just think there's just so much to it. Like, it's like marathon, yes, that's a big challenge. But once you go past 60K, suddenly the time you're out there, it just increases dramatically. You have to start considering proper food, like your sandwiches or whatever. I just think anyone who does it is incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's an Irish guy, Kevin Leahy, at the minute. He's running a 300-mile ultra in the Yukon. And that's just a whole, it's a whole other ball game. Like, not only is it 300 miles, but it's minus 25. It's just, I'd say it's ridiculous. I looked at his average pace there at one stage, and it was still like 6.7 miles an hour, which is like faster than most people would run on the roads, which is just, fantastic.
That is incredible. I'm just trying to find out how long that would be. I'm trying to see if I can find the world record for 300 miles. Just so we can get an idea of just how long you were on your feet. Running for over 86 hours. Oh, that's for 310 miles. Like, that's just crazy.
That is.
You think it's crazy, but you kind of love it as well. You kind of think, wow, that's crazy, but in an amazing way, like a really exciting way. Maybe I'm just cracked. But yeah.
Sorry for the little segue there.
I'm trying to think. I'm barely hitting. If I hit 100 kilometers a week, sorry, not even a week, a month. Oh my God, I used to do it a week. If I hit 100 kilometers a month, you get your little badge on Strava to say you've completed it. I think last month was the first time I got it in several months, and I was so chuffed with myself. And then you see 300 miles, and I'm not sure if I'm feeling so good about my 100-kilometer month. But well done on that, because, that is a really exciting race. A lot of people try and get into it. But, you were lucky enough, got through the lottery. I know our own coach, Sean didn't get it. That's his maybe plan for next year. But yeah, we might see you back at it next year.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
You never know. We might get a few more recruits in. I think at this stage, I seem to be on a bit of an ultramarathon theme so far this year. So I don't know whether I'm just secretly longing to do one, but I might grab a few people along the way and encourage a few people to do it as well.
Yeah, it'd be a great way to do it.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Like, just the whole community, just get a group together, do it together, no pressure, just purely for the love of running and the love of great company. That is my ideal ultramarathon.
No, it definitely makes it easier when you're running with people anyway,
Oh, absolutely. But just to go back then to you, last time you were on, it was before Christmas. We had an amazing conversation, and I really enjoy all the podcasts, but your one just stands out to me because as a female in sport, there was so much I realized that I didn't know about my body and how my body reacts, throughout the cycle and time of the month, and how that affects my training, both positively and negatively. And, having that conversation with you before Christmas, I just went, oh, wow, I really don't know my body. I really don't know how to get the most out of it. So for anyone listening, especially female athletes, it doesn't matter, young, whatever it is, if you're starting out, whether you've been running for years, if you are a female, I really would recommend going back and listening to what Martina has to say. Because like I said, as a female athlete, I've been in the sport for almost 20 years, and there was so much I just didn't know that I wish I had known sooner. So I'm definitely going to link that episode back again. But yeah, I don't know about you, Martina, but I loved that chat we had.
I just love talking about menstrual cycle and how, you know, us female athletes are different to male athletes, and really we shouldn't be training in the same way as them. We shouldn't expect our bodies to perform in the same ways because we're unique. So yeah, it's kind of like we haven't been taught this in school. So really we need to kind of get the information from somewhere else. You know what I mean? So it's great to be able to come onto a podcast like this and talk about all things female health and hopefully help other athletes and younger athletes so that they, you know, are more empowered to make good decisions and have great performances at any stage of their cycle.
That's the great thing about something like this is, like, I remember, I suppose when I started running, you know, social media wasn't as big as it is now, but I wouldn't have known where to go to look for that information. And when I did join social media, it certainly wasn't going to pop up on my newsfeed randomly, this conversation about female athletes, menstrual cycle. Like, even now, there's still a bit of a taboo around it. People shy away from talking about it, which we shouldn't. Like, as you said, we are unique to males. Our bodies are completely different, and we need to, I suppose, take pride in that, but understand it so that we can get the most from it.
Completely agree with you. And like, you're so right. Yes, it is a taboo subject and people don't want to be talking about it. But the other thing is, we just, like, the sort of research gap is huge. We just don't do enough studies on female and female physiology to have that information. So we need to get more research done for a start. And then we need to just keep talking about it and spreading the information so that, you know, everybody knows they should be tracking their menstrual cycle and how it can affect not only just performance, but mood and, you know, your decision-making process and all that sort of stuff. It's so important.
Absolutely. And you're completely right about, you know, the research, and that goes back to being able to find the information freely. If the research isn't done, who is going to be advising people, or, you know, where are we supposed to turn to learn more to help us?
Yeah, and it's funny you say about this, the social media sort of link. I've seen a couple of like physios, or I know Amy O'Donoghue had something shared on her story earlier on, or last week, that was you know, some study was looking for female participants, and they had to be runners, they had to be over 18 years of age, and like it's kind of one, we're gaining our knowledge from social media of different experts having a presence online, but also we can use social media to get this research going and find participants for studies so that, you know, we're sort of narrowing that sort of research gap, and there's more knowledge available then.
And that is the key thing. I actually saw that the study shared, a few Irish athletes had it shared last week. So it is great when something like that pops up. And I suppose if you do fit that category, it is important to be a part of those studies, because if they're looking for participants and you fit that category, well, that's going to lead to more research being done. Because I think with any scientific study, the more people that the study is carried out on, the more reliable it is. You just kind of increase the accuracy. Yeah,
completely agree with you. Like, we need big population samples to be able to add validity to those studies. But it's also, and it's something that Margie Davenport was talking about on at your cervix podcast, it kind of sets a precedent. So once one study is done, it actually allows you to go to ethics boards and say, well, this study has been done, we want to do something similar, but looking at a different aspect. And that's how more and more research is done. So it's kind of like a snowball effect, if you know what I mean.
And, you know, going back to social media, like, it really, really is driving that snowball. Like we get so much more exposure to it nowadays than you would have 10 years ago. So, even just us having this conversation, sharing it on our platforms, that's just a small bit towards keeping this snowball rolling, encouraging people to talk about it, to research it, just get the conversation going.
Yeah, and like as well, if you think about it, like the likes of the Irish athletes sharing that study before, that's social media, that would have been a poster up in a college campus somewhere, and people would have walked past and not paid any attention. Whereas now, if you have someone like Amy O'Donoghue sharing something, and you have a younger athlete, maybe 19, 20 years of age, you might say, oh, that's kind of cool, I'd like to be involved in the study, let's go for that, you know what I mean? So it's an easier way to sort of influence the next generation.
Absolutely. And I suppose the last time we did talk about the menstrual cycle, the whole way from puberty up to menopause, and we did touch briefly on pregnancy, but as we said, it doesn't matter whether your intention is to get pregnant or not. Some women have absolutely no desire to have children, which is perfectly fine. But we still have a menstrual cycle. You still get your period every month, or the majority of women do. So regardless of whether pregnancy is on your radar, it's still important to keep track of your menstrual cycle. If you miss a cycle or things like that, get checked out. Even if you think, oh, well, that's not going to affect me anyway, that can actually indicate other problems as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like they're starting to refer to the menstrual cycle as the fifth vital sign. And when we think about amenorrhea and the problems there with bone density and all of those sort of things, like not having a period is a big problem. And there's so many athletes that would, it's kind of a marker for training hard is that you're not getting a period, like that you're, it's a little pat on the back, like you're doing something right, but it's not. We should be able to train with our physiology, still have a period, and still get the performances, Oh,
absolutely. And, I don't think people realize, like you said, it's really common. I don't think people realize just how common it is for female athletes training at a high level to not have a period. And, while it might seem great at the time, you don't have to worry about bleeding every month and everything that comes with that, the long-term effects can be so serious. And that's another thing that's just not talked about.
Yeah, and like, even you mightn't have a period, but you might still be ovulating, you might still get those shifts in hormones. So you could still have your sort of PMS-y type week where you're bloated, you're lethargic, your performances are down. And because you don't have a period, you've no understanding of why that is. And you can kind of get yourself into a negative cycle of, oh, that week I ran shit, or my times are crap, I just need to train harder. And so sort of it's a negative feedback then, more training, more stress, more cortisol, all of those sort of things.
Yeah, it really can go very negative very quickly. And again, it comes down to understanding your body, understanding what is healthy, what is not healthy, and when to talk to someone, when to see an expert.
Yeah, and like, GPs, not dissing them, but they've so much on their plate that it's kind of hard sometimes to get a GP that will listen to you. But if you have factual information, if you can go in and say, I've missed X amount of periods, I want, I need a little bit of help here. That's probably the way to go. But without that information, you're just kind of shooting in the dark. You don't, there could be anything amiss. There could be a load of different issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we could go on into a conversation about how maybe it should be gynecologists that should be more freely available. Like in the United States, apparently you can't get birth control or anything unless you see gynecologists. GPs can't actually prescribe birth control. So you have to go to the gynecologist, and then, they're obviously that is what they do. They specialize in women's health. So, maybe that's something that, we could go into a long conversation of how gynecologists should be more freely accessible, but who knows? That's maybe a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I think a referral network would be the way to go, as in if you present to the GP and they kind of, referral on to gynecologist, dietitian. When I had amenorrhea, it was the dietitian who eventually got me back on track and got my period back. It wasn't the GP. So I think, having a holistic approach, kind of what, the whole sort of point of the podcast is that sort of holistic approach, like, run hard, but also eat well, recover even harder. And it becomes more about a sort of a lifestyle rather than just one aspect.
Yeah, that is so true. And, because I think gone are the days where you look at your life as kind of a single entity. Like if you're a runner, you're not just a runner. Like being a runner doesn't mean that you just run. Being a runner means that, okay, you need to, as you've just said, recover hard. You need to eat well. These are all things that a runner, and again, whatever way you want to define a runner, but you can't just look and say someone who runs is a runner, because there are other things to it. And, you can even say personal life. You might miss a run because of a family commitment. That doesn't make you any less of a runner, but you're still, as you said, it's a holistic thing. We're not just isolating the running side of things. And I think people are definitely getting better at that.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I agree with you there.
But going back to social media, I don't know about you, but on my Instagram, especially recently, there just seems to be an awful lot of top athletes who are either just announced their pregnancy or recently had babies or are coming back postpartum into high-level performance. Just seems to be an awful lot of them at the moment.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's that effect of when you look for something, you see more of it. Or if they're all lockdown babies or whatever it might be, but yeah, there's definitely a bit of a baby boom on at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even again, maybe we're just looking for it and we're seeing it, but like even the talk around Tokyo, there was a lot of talk about moms in Tokyo. Like there was a real emphasis on the women competing who were mothers, which, was a complete shift from previous Olympics.
I think it was because, like, wasn't it was it and Mother.org or Mother and Org, whatever, that US, Alicia Montano was involved in those, in that organization. They just pushed the issue because I know with COVID, they wanted to make it that if you were breastfeeding at the Olympics, you like basically your baby was like a +1 or like wasn't essential for being there. And it's kind of like you're breastfeeding. And I know there was a lot of chat before Tokyo about like women creating breastfeeding like milk stores, so when they went away to the Olympics there would be enough breast milk at home to feed baby, which is, you shouldn't have to choose between your sport and your child. You know what I mean? It's wrong to place mothers in that position because it doesn't happen to male athletes. It's no problem for male athletes to, after having a baby, to essentially go out and compete the next day. So why should women be restricted in the same way? Provided, obviously, they've returned to running in high level sport in a reasonable time frame. But they should be allowed the same supports as men.
Absolutely. And it really was pushed in the media. A Canadian basketball player, Kim Goucher, she, wanted, to bring her baby to Tokyo, was told she couldn't. And I think, just to quote here from what the Olympic Committee said, is, "It is our understanding that no children stayed at Olympic villages during previous games." So that was part of their statement. And I think they were kind of missing the point with that statement. They might have been staying at the village, but they were still in the country. The athletes could still leave the village and go and breastfeed or whatever. It wasn't an issue. Why Tokyo was such a big issue was they weren't letting anyone in. And so sorry, go on.
Go.
I was just going to say, COVID really brought this to the forefront.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was a COVID issue. But then again, when you think about like close contacts and all that sort of stuff, essentially a child is spending a lot of time with a parent anyway. So it's not as if they're introducing a stranger into the mix. Like, this is someone who is spending a significant portion of the time with the athlete, whether that is, through qualifying, training pre-Tokyo, and then, it's only understandable that they would want to continue that throughout the Olympics as well.
Absolutely. And, I suppose we kind of say, people are already thinking, well, maybe you shouldn't be coming back to sport so soon, especially if you're still breastfeeding. But you can come back to sport about 6 weeks postpartum if your body is holding up. But you can breastfeed for 6 to 12 months and even beyond. So I think people think that breastfeeding is just this thing that once you're back at sport, you probably should stop. But then you don't realize how long you actually breastfeed for.
It's crazy. Like the return to run guidelines recommend restarting running from 12 weeks, which is 3 months postpartum. But the World Health Organization actually recommend that you breastfeed up to 2 years. And I think when we think about and not even like high level athletes, but general health and fitness benefits of training and exercising, if you weren't to do that for 2 years while you breastfed, you would be significantly less fit, less strong. And then if you got pregnant again, where does that leave you for, being able to cope with the demands of pregnancy, labor and delivery, and then, child, rearing and running around after kids and all of that sort of stuff. We shouldn't expect women to shelve their athletic ambitions because they have a desire to breastfeed, And
you didn't even mention the mental, like the positivity you can get from just going out for a run to clear your head. Like, never mind the physical benefits, but the mental benefits. Because, postpartum depression is a big thing. Again, something that maybe wasn't talked about in the past, that's definitely spoken about a lot more now. Something like exercising, especially if you went from someone who ran several times a week to having a baby, having to take a significant amount of time off running. You can still do other activity, but then being told, oh, sorry, you're breastfeeding, we're going to take this release away from you for a year to 2 years. Like, that's not going to do anyone any good.
And Margie Davenport, who I've mentioned already at the beginning of this podcast, she's been doing like research on activity and prenatal and postnatal depression and anxiety. So there is research starting to emerge that staying active throughout your pregnancy is actually good for your mental and your physical health. It, provided it's a low risk uncomplicated pregnancy, there's no ill effects to the fetus, birth weight, any of that sort of stuff. So we should be encouraging more women to stay active during pregnancy.
And I think, again, going back to social media, there is a lot more women who are documenting their journey from when they get pregnant, from when they announce their pregnancy, the training they do, to when they start cutting it back, and then their journey to building it back up again. There is definitely a lot more women who are opening up and sharing their experience, which I think encourages the likes of that research to take place.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that there's a sort of a caveat, or a sort of something to be aware of anyway, is I know Kyla Itzines, the Australian girl, she has her Sweat app, and it's got some prenatal workouts in it. There's a few more. I know Rosanna Davidson and Catherine Thomas in Ireland have prenatal workouts, but they're actually not evidence-based. They're not expert-led. So while it's great that we're seeing more women training during pregnancy and immediately postpartum, we need to be aware that what they're doing mightn't be the best for the general public.
Exactly. And I suppose that's where, you know, the likes of you come in, because you've studied this, you specialize in this. I suppose give us a quick, rundown of what you specialize in.
So, like, first and foremost, I'm a personal trainer, but I did a day course in Dublin on pre and postnatal fitness, and the knowledge was just very outdated. Like, it was all this crack of women shouldn't let their heart rate go over 126 beats per minute, and like, that's one, it's really variable, as in, like, you know, 126 for me and you could be a slow, easy jog. For someone who's not fit, 126 could be them walking up the stairs. So it's really one, you know, that's a bit sort of, it needs to be more nuanced than that. And so I found then that I was kind of like, okay, the more, I can't really serve this population very well. And I know, being a woman, that there is always there's every personal training client I have is either pregnant, postpartum, or thinking about getting pregnant. So I need to have the information here to help these people. So I started doing courses, and most of the information, the good information, comes from the US or Australia. So from the US, I did the Girls Gone Strong, their pre postnatal coaching certificate. Then I went on and did Sarah Duval's course. She's a physio, and she's got a postpartum corrective exercise specialist course. I did Anthony Lowe's female athlete. That was 2 days in Cork, and it was brilliant. Like, just absolutely blew my mind. And then, you know, from Irish physios, I've done Grania Donnelly's diastasis course. Another American one, I've done Brianna Battle's postpartum pregnancy and postpartum athleticism course, and she's got CrossFit base, so like that's ideal for the sort of the type of women that we're coaching, who want to lift heavy and get sweaty and, you know, get a good workout when they're pregnant, you know, and be fit and strong. So, you know, I've probably been specializing in the pre and postnatal sort of space for 3 years now, and, you know, I've coached tons of women, and, you know, all online since the pandemic. But it's I think the knowledge is always evolving. Like, that's what really what I really enjoy about this space is each woman is different, each pregnancy is different. So even if I have someone who returns to me on their second baby, it's a very different pregnancy, it's a very different postpartum journey. And then we have all this new information coming out from the likes of Margie Davenport, Grania Donnelly, Tom Groom and Emma Brockwell did the return to running guidelines. Anthony Lowe is fantastic for new ideas and information around diastasis and prolapse and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a really exciting sort of area to be coaching in.
And I think it's so good for people to hear that there are personal trainers out there who have studied this, who, like you, have done the courses, who keep up to date with the research. Because when you get pregnant, it is important that regardless of what you're doing, whether you're, you know, just purely trained by a running coach, or whether you're personal training, that you have someone that you can have this conversation with. And it's okay if your personal trainer says, look, maybe not my expertise, that you can go somewhere else. And, you know, you shouldn't settle for less. You should really try and find someone like yourself, Martina, who, you know, understands that every woman's different, that every pregnancy is different, and can tailor things to that person.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'd love it if more personal trainers were saying, okay, sorry, listen, hands up, this is out of my scope of practice, but I have a good referral network, so I can point you in the right direction. And like, that's what I do with clients that come to me. If I feel like something is outside my scope of practice, maybe it's, you know, incontinence issues or prolapse postpartum, I always say, like, this is my referral network of physios. I really recommend you go and see one of these. They might have their own exercise program that they recommend, or, you know, physio-led Pilates or something like that. And then once their issue is rectified, they can come back to me, or they can go back to their own personal trainer. But it's that you get that really good healthcare at the very start. And it just means that your issues are resolved quicker, and you prevent yourself from getting injured, and you get a better quality of life out of it.
And you're putting your health and your baby's health first. Like, I know we can be committed to a personal trainer or a coach or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your pregnancy. You have to look out for number one, which is you and the baby.
And I definitely think, like, it's something I don't mind when people ask me questions, or, you know, ask for the latest research or stuff like that, because one, I get a chance to show off all the courses I've done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they've cost thousands of euro. So I can be like, oh, and I'm a nerd as well. So I love all of this science and research and papers and all this. So I can be like, oh my God, well, no, this is the answer to that question. But also it empowers them, because then they have the knowledge. So, you know, it would be really kind of, I try to explain really well in the classes, like, the reasons why we do certain things, the reasons why we avoid certain exercises, you know, what you should be doing outside of class, what to do if this happens. And I even have, for my prenatal class, I even have a doula who comes and does like a 15-minute doula chat every Saturday morning with them. So they're training with me. And then she talks about, you know, labor and birth and pain relief and what to pack in your hospital bag, because that's outside of my scope of practice. But that's what she's doing every day. So they just get this holistic approach to, okay, well, I have the knowledge now. I'm really empowered to have a good pregnancy, good labor and delivery. And I know how to get back to exercise when it comes to that, you know, week or two after having baby. So I can get back to doing what I love and back to exercising and staying fit and healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. I love that, though, getting someone else in who can just add a bit more to it. I think that is such a great idea.
She's just unbelievable. Like, and, you know, when we do it all over Zoom, all the classes, because we're online at the minute, and like, I mute myself and I switch off my camera, but I usually sit down at my desk and I do a bit of admin or whatever while I'm listening to the chats. But like, I've been sitting there going, oh my God, I need to take notes. I need to write this down. Like, you know, this is fantastic. And she's just really down to earth, very practical as well. So we work well together, because she's been through my postpartum course and my pregnancy course, and she's just had her baby. So the likelihood is she'll be back for her second postpartum course, which will look very different to her first postpartum course. But even though she has the knowledge, she still recognizes that she needs a little bit of extra help, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I think that is important, no matter who you are, like whether you're the personal trainer or the woman who is going through the pregnancy, to realize that I can always learn more. I can always get another opinion from someone else. Because a lot of times we are afraid to admit we're wrong or admit we don't know everything. But I think that is so important for getting better and getting the most out of ourselves, is to say, okay, hang on, I don't know everything, and I'm going to ask for help. And it's my second pregnancy. I've done this before, but realizing that, well, actually, this could be very different to my first one, like you said.
And I think as well, like, Sophie Power had a short video up. Now it's months ago, but it's probably still floating around in the realms of the internet. But she worked with two great physios. She worked with Emma Brockwell and Grania Donnelly for her postpartum rehab. And there is a woman on her third pregnancy, a very accomplished athlete, who reached out and got expert advice. And, you know, there is a barrier there, as in, you know, particularly in Ireland, the public pelvic health physios, you know, they're definitely overbooked, and it's you know, there is a barrier, as in you have to pay to see them privately. But if you can at all, it's so worth it, because they're just a wealth of knowledge, and they can give you a really good picture of how you're recovering and what your pelvic floor, your core is like, where you might have some weaknesses that need to work on or some issues that need to be resolved. And then it's, you know, general strength and fitness and back to your running or whatever it might be, you know.
But it does all start with pelvic floor health and strength, because that's before you even consider running. If you can't do some basic exercises, you're supposed to just stay away from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it does start like, and even, you know, in the sort of few days after birth, we should be concentrating on that breathing, pelvic floor, core connection, because that's the foundation of it all. Like, it holds everything together. And once pelvic floor and core are kind of coming along, okay, you can start doing some direct core work and some direct strength work. So like squats and lunges, that sort of stuff. But then it's progressive overload and you're into your sort of impact, and that's going to get you back running as well. But yeah, it does start with all the pelvic floor and the core. And it's interesting, I was one of my prenatal clients this morning, she is 21 weeks pregnant, and she just said to me, just right when the session started, she said, I'm not sure I'm doing those pelvic floor exercises right. And I said, okay, well, what do you mean? She said, I just don't feel it. And I said, okay, put her into a sort of optimal position for this. And I said, the best thing to do is like whack it on, go 100%, like pretend it's like a max lift from your pelvic floor. And she was like, oh, I feel it now. And I was like, there you go. I was like, sometimes you just need the extra little bit of advice. And she had a great outlook. Like I said, it's fantastic that you're asking these questions now at 21 weeks. And she said, well, it's better ask them now than ask them at like 31 or 36 when, you know, I have a problem. I want to make sure I'm doing these right throughout my pregnancy so that I have the best chance of a good recovery. And I was like, oh my God, like that is phenomenal. Like that's brilliant.
Yeah, because obviously the earlier you started, or, you know, the stronger your pelvic floor is, it is going to help you along the way. And even with coming out the other side, again, every pregnancy is different. You could be doing everything correctly the whole way along and it still mightn't go smoothly. But at least by doing it properly and asking for the advice, you're giving yourself the best chance of a smooth pregnancy. And
you're controlling the controllables. Like, you know, labor and delivery are so unpredictable. But by having good advice, good birth preferences, being fit and active and strong, you know, and having a good awareness of your pelvic floor and core, it just means that out the other side after your labor and delivery, you have all of that knowledge. It doesn't go away. So that you're giving yourself the best chance.
Absolutely. So important. I just wanted to go back and talk. You mentioned sort of barriers in pregnancy, and I just wanted to bring in probably the most famous example of barriers in pregnancy. I think anyone who follows track and field at all has heard of Allyson Felix. Mm-hmm. And Allyson Felix, she is the most decorated, she's the most decorated US track and field athlete. And she's the most decorated woman in Olympic track and field history. This might have changed since Tokyo. She might be just the most decorated Olympian in track and field, full stop. But she had her first baby back in 2019. And, you know, this woman has countless Olympic gold medals, countless, I think she was on 11 world titles back then. And she has a baby, and her title sponsor, who had been Nike for years, suddenly were not paying her fully. And like, you know, for a top athlete, when you see a massive company like Nike dropping their sponsorship because you've had a baby, what kind of message does that send to women all over the world?
Yeah, like I remember being so angry at this because, like, effectively, you know, it's a really tough time on women. You know what I mean? So much of your identity changes. You go from being and like, okay, she hasn't stopped being an Olympian because she's had a baby, but if you're so used to being that athlete and having that athlete mindset, to suddenly being, unable to do some of the stuff that you've previously done, maybe needing to take a little bit more time with your recovery, to then having your income and your main sponsor drop out, it's a bit like, whoa, that was a slap in the face when I didn't need it. And it really just showed how difficult it is for women to stay in sport, from the lower levels to, the higher levels. And I seen this when I played rugby, women would have babies and they just never came back to the club, because we played on Sundays, the men played on Sundays. So suddenly you have a clash. If you have kids, who minds the babies when both parents are playing? And it was always left to the women. So that's one side of it. And then, at the elite level, you've lost the sponsorship, which makes getting to international events so much harder. It means, do you suddenly have to take up a job to support your running, which is dividing your energies and your focus. It's so tough. And that's why, we need more people who are educated in prenatal and postnatal exercise to help remove those barriers for women to keep them active.
Because this really did shock a lot of people. At the time, so 2019 US Outdoor Championships, most decorated female in Olympic track and field history, stepping on the start line with no sponsorship. And I think this, 2019 just seemed to be the year. I know we talk about Tokyo and how it was really seen as the mom Olympics, 18 moms competed in Tokyo. But I think it kind of kicked off 2019, especially with this conversation, because Nike, they completely changed their policies after, I suppose they probably received a lot of backlash from this. One of the top athletes in the world, and you're dropping her because she had a baby. Hello, we're in the 21st century. Get a grip.
And I think as well, when you think about those 18 athletes and mothers who were in Tokyo, I think possibly, Alison Felix coming back from pregnancy and competing to that really high level. And there's been others as well, but it was a watershed moment. It showed other women that this is what can be done. I know there's a British rower who had a baby, and she was going to retire, and then to get fit after her labor and delivery, she just decided to sit up on the rower again and was like, actually, you know what? I still really love this, and I can be both. I can be an athlete and I can be a mother. And, it's that sort of awareness that, women can be both. Just because a new role begins being a mother, it doesn't mean the previous athlete has to stop or retire,
Absolutely. And I do think we need more Alison Felixes in the world, because, Nike, it was 70% less that they were going to pay her. So pay her 70% less, that is, that's just a crazy amount of money that you are losing. But she stepped away from them, started her own athletics apparel brand. She won Olympic gold this year in her own shoes and apparel. Well, not her own apparel, because she's wearing the state apparel, but in her own shoes. But this is something I don't think a lot of people know, is that she actually paid for the child minding for a lot of the moms in Tokyo who had to leave their kids at home and couldn't afford child minding. She actually set up, I think it was her own money that she actually paid for some of these women so that their kids could get the care they needed, so that they could continue to pursue their dreams.
And it's great that she was able to do that, and it's fantastic that she was charitable enough to do it. But that's wrong on so many levels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just goes to show, and there's huge benefits to training during pregnancy and postpartum, but there's so many barriers. And you need to have a really good support network for you to be able to return to that high level. And it doesn't even have to be like your high level, not even like an Olympics. Like, what's your high level? What was your previous best? Like, to get back to that, you need a lot of support.
Yeah. And, again, it's knowing where to look for that support and realizing that you don't have to settle for less than that. Like, the support is out there if you just go looking for it. And like you said, Alison Felix is obviously at the top end of sport, but that doesn't mean, we can all still get back to our top end, like you said. Just because she's winning Olympic gold medals, it doesn't mean her journey as a mom or becoming a mom was any different to anyone else's and trying to get back to what they want to achieve.
Yeah. And I think what I'd love to see is like those sort of women sharing, like, not exactly what they're doing during pregnancy, but like pretty close to exactly what they're doing. Like, there's it's very individual. So like, obviously what they do is going to be different to what you do or what I do if we were pregnant, but so that other women can see that, yeah, it's okay to run, up until X number of weeks or until I feel okay. And yes, it's okay to strength train. And yes, it's okay to do all of these things, because we know the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists recommends 150 minutes of exercise per week, and like 2 global strength sessions. Like, we need to find a way to inspire women to do that recommendation, to stay as active as they can. And I think having people like that would really, help women to kind of say, okay, well, I am going to continue training during pregnancy, and I know it's safe, and I'm going to try and make that 150 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, follow some of these women on social media. They can be inspiring. I suppose when you're following them, just remember that, they are having the top advice, that you should not do exactly what they do, because that might not be the best thing for you. But definitely follow them, because just one of the most recent ones I saw, this was a few weeks back, British 800-meter runner Lindsay Sharp. She recently had a baby. She's been documenting just, bits and pieces. She got to 12 weeks postpartum. She says she couldn't wait for this day because this was the day she was told she could finally run. And she said her body just didn't feel like running, so she didn't run. And I just thought that just kind of shows the journey. Like, that's the recommendation. But I just loved her honesty that she'd got to that point. She was so excited. She was sharing this excitement as to reaching this milestone. And her body was just like, no, can't do it. Not today. Let's postpone it. And she shared that openly, which I really liked.
I think that's really good, because again, I think we buy into this kind of like go hard or go home culture. And, I've had so many people, message me or in classes being like, yeah, so I got my 6-week GP check and now I'm good to go for all of the things. And I'm like, no, hold on. Like, how do you feel? What's your stress level like? What's your sleep like? Have you, and I think screening for pelvic floor dysfunction as well, being like, have you any incontinence? Do you feel you might have a prolapse? Like, have you diastasis? And asking those questions. But I think that's a great message to have for women. I'm just not ready just yet. Like it, and I think we have to remember as well that pregnancy and postpartum, it's when we think of our athletic longevity and our athletic lives, it's a really small window. So by minding ourselves during our pregnancy and our postpartum and following a really smart return to run or return to exercise program, we can actually preserve and stretch out our athletic longevity rather than rushing maybe back at like Lindsay at 12 weeks and maybe ending up with something like an injury and having to take a couple of years off or a couple of months off of running or exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think if we were to summarize this entire conversation, the key things for me anyway would be every pregnancy is different. Listen to your body and ask the questions and seek the advice.
Yeah, I think that's really good summaries. The one thing I would add in is risk v reward. So because we're dealing with a lot of athletes, listen to your body is great, but a lot of the time the athlete sort of mindset or the athlete brain will just kick in and just go, Asher, look, you're just being lazy, or you can do one more set or push through. Whereas we need to kind of look at, particularly during pregnancy, what's the risk v reward? So what's the risk of doing this activity? What's the reward? If the reward is greater than the risk, a lot of times just asking what's the risk here will make women kind of just pause and think, okay, maybe this is not for today. So yeah, that's the only thing I would add into your sort of 3-point summary. But yeah, completely agree.
Absolutely. But, we are going to put your details up, because even if you just have a question, just to throw it at you, they can reach you on social media. It's just so worth that. Don't be in the dark about it, because the more we talk about it, the more understanding we have, the easier the whole journey is going to be for you, for everyone around you.
Yeah, and like my social media, I have a couple of posts up there about reintroducing impact postnatally and what that looks like. Like it starts with heel slams and it goes to jumps, and then like single leg hops and stuff, and then you're pretty much running. There's some the strength and impact and load tests from the return to running guidelines are up there as well in a post, and I have a directory of pelvic health physios. So if you're outside of Ireland, I might know someone, but if you're inside of Ireland, I definitely know someone. So that's like they're great resources. And then the ACOG website is really good for information as well. And then I really recommend the At Your Cervix podcast. There's some great there's been some great interviews up there. Grania Donnelly and Emma Brockwell host that, and they've actually interviewed Lizzie Lee. She's the Irish Cork athlete. Yeah, you're nodding your head. You know who she is, and Margie Davenport. So there's good information up there.
Okay, amazing. We will do our best to link all them. We'll definitely link them to you. As you said, we can find a lot of the information on your social media. It's Fit Mná. So again, if you are in Ireland, you will understand that. Fit Woman, Fit Mná. If you are outside of Ireland, it is just the Irish for woman, but we will put it all up so you can find it. But Martina, I just want to say thank you again, because it's always such a pleasure to talk to you, and I just learn so much every time, and I think it's important to share that.
Super, thanks. I love sharing this sort of information, and like that, if anyone has any questions, don't be afraid to reach out on Instagram and ask. If I don't know the answer, I'll find out, or I'll point you in the right direction. But I'm more than happy to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And, don't be afraid to ask the questions. And thank you for listening.